And welcome back. It's sort of the Clear Jets podcast. We're hosts Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Well, Michael, we've officially hit that point of the offseason where the draft's in the rearview mirror, free agency's already happened, the schedule's already been released. It's time for us to manufacture some content. Luckily, the Jets start their OTA practices this week, so I'm sure some stuff will pop up. With that said, though, what are your expectations? I mean, when you're a good team, there isn't as much room for debate. This roster is looking pretty solid. I mean, what are you looking to get out of OTA practices this week?
I mean, you said it. It's a totally different feeling at this point of the offseason than what we're used to because usually at this point, we're feeling optimistic because of the draft, free agency, everything that's happened. But even with all that optimism, there are usually still so many holes on the roster and positions that, have a lot of uncertainty to them. And there still are some positions absolutely on this roster that, still need to be figured out, still some question marks. And we'll talk about some of those today. But overall, the feeling is, not quite as what's the word for it? Like we're just
Dire?
more satisfied with the with
Yeah.
the roster right now than I think you typically are. There's just less worry than there typically is. That's not to say anything's guaranteed for the Jets this year, but overall, you just feel pretty good about it, and you're more excited to see how things are going to play out than you are concerned right now. So it's a different feeling than what we're used to. It feels like there's less to talk about right now because like I said, I think usually at this point it's the conversation is driven by sort of the desperation, let's say, because you're just so concerned about all those issues that you want to talk about it. Right now, you're just like, can the season get here? Because you're so excited, to see this team. So it's a nice positive change, but there's still some stuff to talk about. We were able to drum up some topics here after some deliberation.
Yeah, we're really
Pretty
selling
thorough.
people on listening to this podcast today. I
There
mean,
are some amazing topics. This is the best we can come up with, the absolute most in-depth
well, hey,
content that you could get right now.
I think this podcast is at its best when we take a specific topic, we find a niche, and we really just dive into the nitty gritty of it. And we do have some exciting ones planned for this summer, some interviews that we've lined up. So we will have a full content schedule for the summer. But like you said, I mean, today we really had to dig deep to find some topics because what are you even looking for for OTA practices, especially when you have a veteran quarterback? I mean, I think last year with Zach Wilson, we were all just wanting to see him complete bubble screens and so we could overreact to some Twitter clips. I mean, what can you take out of these OTA practices, Michael? I mean, is there anything to be drawn from these Twitter clips that we'll inevitably get? I guess we get to finally see Aaron Rodgers in his bulbous Jets helmet. Is there anything else to be taken away from a veteran team at OTA practices?
Well, I before we recorded this, we were kind of writing down our notes for this episode, some of the stuff that we want to discuss, and this exact topic came up, and I wrote down a list of mini camp goals, and I was kind of joking, but it's also kind of serious. And some of the main goals for me include no broken bones, no pulled muscles, no strained
Right.
muscles,
Nice.
none of
Okay.
those things. Ignore all that. As long as you could avoid all those things, I think you had yourself a great OTA, great mini camp, all that. So no injuries is all we really care about. But I
Maybe some
mean,
cool highlights. Some cool
cool
highlights
highlights
would be
are
nice.
fun. I mean, Jets fans are just getting hyped up over literally anything Aaron Rodgers does on the practice
Slant to
field right
Alan
now.
Lazard.
Just slant to Lazard. Even if I'm just gonna say it, some of the passes I've seen in these clips, even if it's slightly behind,
Okay,
they'll
that's
fans will still eat it up. But that's topic for another
Hey,
day.
we did find that clip before. We were looking. Michael and I were name searching our Twitters to find maybe some good or bad takes that we've had in years past, and somehow we stumbled upon a practice clip of Zach Wilson. Do you want to tell the listeners what the clip was? It was pretty indicative of the 2022 season. So maybe a clip like that will pop up that could be indicative of this year.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like an indicator of what was to come. I mean, Zach Wilson rolls to his left and he throws like this flip pass one-handed across his body over the middle of the field. It's like 3 feet above Garrett Wilson's head, and he leaps up and snags it with one hand. Definitely would have been intercepted if he didn't make that catch. So, when you watch that the first time, I think fans were excited about it. Like, can't wait to see these guys doing this all season. Let the kids play. I love that backyard mentality, but it's much more an indicator of the recklessness that we saw. But at the same time, Garrett Wilson bailing him out. So it was like a microcosm of what the season turned out to be. So, yeah, I guess you can see little glimpses of what the season's potentially going to be. I mean, obviously, you never want to read into these clips too much. This is coming from someone who made like 2-minute breakdowns of rookie camp clips a couple
those were
weeks
jokes,
ago.
though, right?
But they were joking.
Okay.
I was joking in those videos. But go check them out. They're fun to make.
You gonna make any more?
I definitely will make some more once
we just
these
need
next
one
videos come out.
All I want out of this week, honestly, is just one clip of a Rodgers deep ball. I just want a deep ball touchdown to Garrett Wilson, because you do get the 7-on-7s, the 11-on-11s. We'll see how much they do in this first week, but if we could just get one nice like 60-yard touchdown that I can just watch for the next few weeks, that might hold me over until training camp.
That's what just like that one he threw to Lazard against the Jets, but to Garrett Wilson.
Oh. Over Brandon Eccles again?
Was it Brandon Eccles?
Yeah,
it was Reed covering that one. I think it was Reed covering that throw.
Oh, well, his touchdown was against Eccles. I mean, speaking of Eccles, if we're going to talk serious things that you can take out of this week and the ensuing weeks of OTAs, this is more important for the young guys. I mean, the guys who are on the fringe of the roster, some of the young guys that might be expected to take a leap into a bigger role. Who is this camp most important for when you look at this roster? I mean, who really does need to have a good camp to kind of solidify their mark on the roster as you head into training camp, you go into that break? I mean, who are you looking for you want to see those practice tweets from Connor Hughes and Rich Cimini talking about, maybe a Zach Kuntz touchdown or a Tony Adams interception? Who comes to mind?
I think, obviously your mind first goes to the fringe guys, whether that's the fringe of the roster or the fringe of the starting lineup. And in the starting lineup, I think, you're looking at the offensive line first and foremost, and we'll talk more about them later. That's one of our big topics that we got lined up for this middle of May podcast. Little spoiler there. But yeah, I think looking at the O-line is first and foremost. But then I think at the bottom of the roster, you got guys like, or maybe this isn't even bottom of the roster, but Tony Adams gunning for that starting.
He's going to start.
Yeah, I mean, he's a potential starter, so I don't know. That's not really what I meant by that. I mean, I was just more just looking at younger guys who maybe aren't at the forefront.
Okay, you sorted by age. Okay.
Yeah, they're not veterans. This is a running joke on the podcast. We have different definitions of what a veteran is.
Can you remind the viewers what your definition is? Because it's ridiculous.
Admittedly, I think you've kind of changed my stance on it, but my original argument was that veterans are only, I was initially saying, I think 30-plus players, like very seasoned players.
Yeah. I said year 3.
But I've come down. I think it's maybe year 4. Maybe
year 3. First year, you're a rookie.
That is
second year, you're a second-year player. Third year, you're a veteran. If you make it 3 years in the NFL, you're a vet.
You changed my stance on that. But nevertheless, what am I even talking about?
I'm the ghostwriter.
Yeah, that's 100% true. But yeah, Tony Adams is a big one. I'll be looking at him because he's got a legitimate chance of starting a free safety. Jamien Sherwood, Quan Alexander, it's starting to look like he may not come back. He met with the Steelers, did not sign, and it has been a while at this point. I think at least a week. So maybe that doesn't transpire, but he is still a free agent. If he doesn't come back, Sherwood and also Hamza Nasruddin, they'll be competing for that third linebacker spot. So guys like that. And then to actually look at the bottom of the roster more accurately this time, I think Zach Kuntz is a guy who's probably more of a fringe player than it would seem. I mean, obviously the Jets drafted him, but it's not uncommon for 7th-round picks to not make the team, the initial 53-man roster. So I think he's going to have to show some stuff to be able to stay in the roster, especially on special teams. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. Wide receiver, the bottom of that depth chart, I don't know if Mims is a complete lock this time, just because, it's year 4. He hasn't really shown too much yet. So we'll see if he can fend. I mean, he doesn't have the greatest competition, but can he fend off Irvin Charles, Deontay Spencer, all those guys? So there are some battles to keep an eye on. I don't know if we'll get the biggest, movement or development at this point of the offseason, but you can sort of see the seeds planted before you get to training camp.
Yeah, I feel like it's more of an opportunity. As much as, the offensive line is probably the biggest question mark on this team, it's more of an opportunity, I think, for the fringe receivers and DBs, because you can get a better sense on those one-on-one matchups, who's really flashing, especially when you look at the undrafted free agents. Is there any undrafted free agents or anybody from rookie minicamp that is now, on this 90-man roster that you're kind of keeping an eye out for? Is there anybody that kind of jumped off the page to you that you think might be able to sneak onto the roster?
To be completely honest, and this is a part of being a good team, like we mentioned earlier, no, there really isn't. I don't
Not
think
even a
any.
receiver?
I I really don't think any of these undrafted free agents have a chance, and that's a big change compared to what we're used to. Usually, the roster is so lacking on depth that you can identify 3 to 4 guys who you're like they have a really good chance to make the team, and often some of them do. But this time around, looking at the roster, I just don't see it. I mean, do you have anyone in mind?
Well, there's those. I would say receivers the one spot where they might be able to stick. Maybe safety as well. Maybe corner. I guess it is the receiver DBs. Like I said, I mean they had those 3 undrafted receivers: Jason Brownlee, Xavier Gibson, and T.J. Luther. I'd be looking to see if any of them can start to make flash plays. I guess these are the weeks where you'll kind of get a better sense of, okay, what are the undrafted free agents like? If somebody is consistently making plays in minicamp, then the question turns to training camp. Can they repeat it then? And then turns to preseason games, and then you wind up with another situation like the Jets had with Robbie Anderson or Bryce Huff, and a guy sticks. I do think ultimately at least one undrafted free agent will stick on this team. I think it's most likely to be a receiver. One of the other things that you can take out of this is kind of the initial starting lineup. Granted, you have to take it with a grain of salt. I think last year, I don't think Sauce was the initial starting corner. I think Bryce Hall was. I'd imagine it would be similar for the offensive line. I imagine McGovern might be listed as the starting center. Although when week 1 comes around, I would imagine Tippmann is going to start. I guess let's run through it. What do you think the initial starting lineup will look like at OTAs day 1? We can run through it together. Obviously, Rodgers is going to be the starting quarterback. At running back, I mean Brees is injured, so who's taking those first team reps? Is it Carter or is it why am I completely spaced? Donovan Knight, Jesus, or is it Donovan Knight? Who's taking those first team reps at running back? Do you think?
I think Carter, but I mean Knight is in the mix. But like you said, Bryce Hall being the starting corner last year, I think it's more of a name only sort of thing. Like earn it before you actually get the title. So I think it'll be Carter based on the experience advantage, but I think Knight could have a chance to pass him by the time the season comes.
What about the offensive line? Because this is a big question. We will dive into the O line a little bit more towards the end of this podcast. What's that initial 5 look like? You have Becton, who's come out very publicly this week and criticized the Jets coaching staff for playing him at right tackle last year, saying that he was injured, saying that he was complaining to the coaching staff. I mean, I guess this is a good time to hop into that topic. What did you make of that? For anybody who didn't see, Becton, he's gone a little bit viral, I guess you could say, for you see how much better shape he's in this year compared to years past. I would imagine some reporters reached out to him like, hey, let's write a story on Mekhi Becton's transformation. Within that, he has the article with Newsday, and in that he kind of lampoons the Jets coaching staff a bit. I mean, honestly, it's a bit disappointing to see. Obviously, this is his point of view, and he clearly was frustrated that the Jets were trying to play him at right tackle after a right knee injury. He seems to be equally frustrated this offseason, and maybe that's part of the reason he did go public with it, because it sounds like the Jets' plan is to play him at right tackle again this year with Dwayne Brown at left tackle. But if Becton really puts his draws a line in the sand and says, look, I'm only going to play left tackle this year, he has that competition with Dwayne Brown. Who's the opening right tackle? Is it Billy Turner? Is it Max Mitchell? Is it Carter Warren? So I guess we can hop in a little bit to the offensive line, but we'll get into the best case, worst case, most likely article that you wrote a little bit later. But what did you make of Becton's story? And with the OTAs, what does that initial starting 5 look like to you?
It's definitely frustrating to continuously, have off-field drama with Becton, because you would just prefer to see him just stay focused on getting healthy, getting prepared for the season, and just going out there and having the best year he can. But it always seems like there's more drama with him, so it's not preferred. I understand his perspective, but at the same time, as a team, you definitely would like to keep the drama down. So hopefully he can stay healthy, have a great year, and put all this behind him. What happens beyond this year is a whole nother discussion. But for now, it's definitely, I don't know. It seems like he does a little too much talking on social media
Hey,
and
I
through
will
this
say,
article
I
than
will say he does
he
look
has
like
warranted.
he does look in incredible shape right now. He does
He
deserve some
does. He
credit for
does.
that. I mean, he looks like if he can stay healthy, is on track to having a great year. What do you think that starting five looks like day one of OTAs? Is it McGovern at center? Is it Brown at left tackle? Is if Becton says, "Hey, I'm not playing right tackle," is he on the bench or is he riding with the second teamers? I mean, how do you see this playing out?
I think it will be Brown at left tackle. Um, like you said, I think McGovern will be the center to start. Tippmann should beat him out eventually. I mean, they barely gave McGovern anything. Well, it was barely over $1 million, I think.
Yeah, Schweitzer got more.
Um, yeah, so I think maybe even he's the center to start out based on that Schweitzer. I think Tippmann's going to get it by the time the season starts, but unlikely they give it to him right off the bat. But I do think Becton's going to be at right tackle, and he's just going to have to give in. I don't know. It's an odd situation because it's not often you get a player who, again, like he hasn't even played a full season's worth of games, and he thinks he could demand what position he's going to play. I don't know. I think he's going to have to play right tackle just because Dwayne Brown is a pure left tackle, hasn't played the right side, and that's the position that is best for him right now, or that's what the team needs. So, I mean, do you think there's a chance he will, say I'm only playing left tackle, he'll be the backup, or the Jets will give in, put him
I
at that
think
first team left tackle? What do you think?
I don't think he would be I think if he really draws the line in the sand and says, "Look, I'm a left tackle," clearly he's not going to earn many fans in the front office. And like you said, next year is a different discussion on whether or not he comes back. But I do think he is in store for a big year. I think he would probably compete with Dwayne Brown for the left tackle job if he really draws the line in the sand. But you look at who would be the right tackle. I guess Billy Turner, if we're just talking OTAs, is probably the obvious guy to fill in there. But you'd hope that through training camp, if this is the case, if Becton says I'm only a left tackle and maybe he beats out Dwayne Brown, you'd have to hope that maybe Carter Warren or Max Mitchell can fill in there. It is an interesting situation to watch, and that is probably the biggest storyline I would say from OTAs to take out is where is Becton playing? Because if he's playing right tackle, that's probably part of the reason he lampooned the coaching staff in this article is because he wants to draw people's attention to the fact that look, I'm coming off of an injured right knee. I've missed 2 seasons. As a right tackle, I have to put more weight on that right knee. I don't want to do that. He feels like he's at his best at left tackle. He did have a very good rookie season at left tackle. I get his perspective. Like you said, you would imagine or you'd hope that a player who hasn't played in 2 years that, isn't really guaranteed anything. I mean, he looks like he could be great, but he has missed 2 seasons of football, would keep his head down and keep working. But again, he's put in the work. He looks like he's in phenomenal shape, and we'll see how it all plays out. But that to me is the most interesting storyline to watch. You'd imagine some of the other things that you can take away. We can keep running through kind of the initial starting lineups, but it's who's injured. There was a story this week about Ty Johnson. I kind of wanted to get your take on it. Who got injured lifting on his own, tore a pec, came to the Jets doctors. This is his side of things, but we'll take him at his word here. Went to the Jets doctors, said, told him that he injured his pec. They told him to get surgery, and then the next day they cut him. It's not an unusual situation in the NFL. It's a little surprising that it wasn't in the CBA to have some sort of protection for non-football injuries, but it is the nature of the game. And I think it is worth noting that I don't think Ty Johnson would have made the final roster to begin with, but it does still cost him, maybe a shot at, just collecting his paycheck, I guess. But with OTAs, you get a sense of, okay, who's still injured? I mean, who's not practicing? Who's on the side? Because I guarantee you Ty Johnson isn't the only person who's gotten injured. In a non-football injury, there's definitely been pulled hamstrings or sprained ankles or whatever that guys are fighting through. So you'll get a better idea of the health of the roster and also the health of guys who are coming off of injuries. I don't expect to see, AVT or Brees or any of those guys on the field. Maybe they'll be doing some sort of individual workouts, which would be great to see. But you kind of get a sense of the health of the roster. What did you make of that Ty Johnson situation and kind of just the health of the Jets roster as a whole?
It was definitely, I mean, just like the Becton stuff, it's something that isn't the greatest look, and you just prefer for it not to be in the news. But I think it's one of those things where you kind of have to know the whole story before you can really judge it, because obviously, from Ty Johnson's perspective, it's extremely unfortunate, and you feel bad for him because he was preparing to fight for the roster. He wasn't going to be a lock to make it. He suffers the injury outside of the team facility. He's going to miss the whole season. Now he's not on the team. So it's a really tough break. But at the same time, from the Jets' perspective, it's just part of the business. He's, like we said, a fringe roster player who probably had a 50-50 chance to make the team at best. And so if he's going to be out for the season, it's just, part of the business. But then there's the aspect of, Johnson says the Jets told him to get the surgery, and then they cut him afterwards, and he didn't want to get the surgery. But, who was he talking to? Was that, forced on him by Douglas, by the front office, or was that just a recommendation from the team doctor who didn't know what the team was going to do with him? So see
And
both
also,
sides of it. Yeah, go ahead.
is there really any way for a running back to play through a torn pec? I mean, especially a guy like John, like you can't stiff
Right,
arm.
like, I'm not sure how he was like, I guess it seems like he thought he could fight through it, but
You could maybe rehab it without the surgery, I guess. But
that's also true.
yeah, it's a tough situation all around. But I guess that is another thing you'll get out of these OTAs is seeing, okay, what is the health of the roster looking like? I guess to run through the rest of the starting lineup, you'd imagine tight ends will look similar with Conklin taking the majority of the first team reps. I'll be interested to see how many reps does Ruckert get? And a guy like Mims too at receiver. Some of these other fringe guys, new coaching staff, new system. Not in the LaFleur doghouse. A guy like Mims, is Mims getting more first team reps? Is Ruckert getting more first team reps? They also, I think, somebody that we've all completely forgotten about, but Nick Bowden, the fullback. Do the Jets keep a fullback? Does Nathaniel Hackett want to keep a fullback? You can maybe get a sense of that. Just we'll see in terms of the plays that they run during these OTA practices. On the defensive side of things, I mean, how do you see that? What's that front four look like to you? Those initial, obviously, the Jets are going to rotate like crazy, but on first downs, what's your ideal first down starting four for the Jets?
I think if it's first down, you have to have Al Woods out there because you consider that a running situation. Like 1st and 10, middle of the field, it's probably an Al Woods situation. Quinnen obviously next to him. That's a
Quinn
whole
is
nother discussion.
Quinn is probably not going to be there,
But he's
so
probably not going to be there at this point. But I guess we're just talking. I mean, are we talking about not including Quinnen, what we're going to see on the field, or
Yeah,
just
I guess we're just talking
overarching?
OTAs. Who would fill in for Quinton? It's interesting because if he gets injured during the season, who is his direct? Is it Solomon Thomas? Is it Quentin Jefferson?
I guess some combination of both of them, and then who even beyond that would be the next man up is probably an even more
Tanzel
interesting
Smart,
question. Probably Smart. I think they would.
Clemens.
Clemens could kick inside, so yeah, that bottom of the defensive tackle depth chart is something interesting to watch. But I mean, first down, I guess it would be Quinn and Al Woods. I think JFM is still going to be your starting base edge defender, and Carl Lawson. I do think they're going to stick with that.
Speaking of Carl Lawson, he restructured his contract this week. That probably is the biggest news to talk about. You'd imagine that there's free. I think the Jets now have about 18 million in cap space, if I'm not mistaken. So he created a lot for the Jets. They did have to add a few void years, so they'll be paying some dead money to Carl in the next few seasons. But he did take a bit of a pay cut. So glad to see that they could come to terms on that. You think that move was just to free up room for the Rodgers restructure, who, by the way, is only making $1 million this season. Then he's due like 147 million next year. So they've already said they're going to restructure it. They're going to move some money back into this year. We'll see if Rodgers takes a bit of a pay cut. That's what I'm really hoping for, to see. Look, you can make Rodgers, especially if he wins here, it's going to make a hell of a lot of money in marketing and media being in New York City. So maybe he can stomach a bit of a pay cut. But at the end of the day, he's still going to get paid, 15 to 20 to $25 million this season. Do you think that's all the restructure was for, or do you think the Jets have one more big swing in them? I mean, they really were. If you look at free agency and some of the rumblings, they were trying to make at least one more splash. There was that report that Devonte Adams isn't happy with Las Vegas. Could we see some sort of trade for a big name at receiver? DeAndre Hopkins is unhappy. Do you think the Jets have one more big swing in them, or is this move, in your eyes, more so to just move Rodgers' money around?
Yeah, I don't think I see the splash move. I think it's more just for the Rodgers factor, like you said, still trying to sign Quinnen, things like that, just housekeeping stuff. I don't think there's another big move in the cards. I wouldn't rule it out entirely, but it's just not something that personally I see happening. I mean, do you see some sort of chance for that?
I'll never say never, especially since the Jets are really going all in on this season.
Right.
I don't see it happening. But hey, if Devonte is really unhappy and the Jets offer Corey Davis and really, I mean, what would it even take to get Devonte Adams? I feel like the Raiders would want a premium for a player like that. So I think that's probably more of a pipe dream. The Jets aren't really in a position to be shelling out other draft picks. Corey Davis and Jordan Whitehead and maybe CJ Uzomah are kind of their only veteran trading blocks, and I just don't think that's. Um, I don't see it happening. I agree with you. I think this move is really just to make room for the Rodgers money. But hey, if Adams is really unhappy and Rodgers is willing to take a massive pay cut to make it happen, maybe they could make it happen. I mean, they are going all in on this season, so I wouldn't say never say never, especially as we get into training camp. We'll see with injuries and whatnot, but no, I'm not expecting that at all. I think the other interesting part about the starting lineup, and really the only surprise, I guess, would be with the safeties, because Jordan Whitehead was a guy that I really did pencil in as a guy who's going to be an automatic cut. The Jets get free $7 million. I thought he did make some big flash plays last year. The Jets spoke very highly of him, but at the end of the day, once they brought in Chuck Clark, who performed better, much cheaper, both guys are seemingly strong safeties. It seemed like a foregone conclusion he'd be out of here, but here he is at practice, and it seems like it's in the Jets' cards to have both Whitehead and Adams and Chuck Clark. It'll be interesting to see how they deploy them all. Without bringing back Quan, you'd imagine that they're going to give Chuck Clark a lot more reps at linebacker, but we'll get a sense of that in OTAs. Obviously, nothing crazy. How do you see the Jets deploying their safety? I mean, is there any chance that Whitehead or Clark is listed as a free safety? And then, is when they get to third down, that's when they bring in Adams and move Clark to linebacker. I mean, how do you see what's that first down safety look? I mean, look, hell of a run defense to have two strong safeties like that, but you do leave yourself open in the back end. Although I guess you could say the Jets have some damn good corners to make up for it. So how do you see the starting safeties playing out day one of OTAs?
I think Adams is just going to win that free safety job, and it's going to be Whitehead or not Whitehead, either Whitehead or Clark, I should say. I think they'll compete for that starting strong safety
So one of
job.
them's on the bench?
No, I think whoever doesn't get that, I do think we're going to see more of those big nickel packages, more strong safety in the box with Quan not being there.
Right.
If he doesn't come back. I think we're going to see more of that. Whoever that is who doesn't start, I think we'll
Probably
see.
Clark.
Or even if they do start, I think we could even maybe see some interchangeability more so than here's your one starter who plays every snap. I think you could see some rotation and then some extra reps, as that sub linebacker. So maybe that would mean you get less of whoever that third linebacker ends up being, which, you think Sherwood maybe gets that right now, but could be Nasruddin. But I think that's what we'll see. Some more flexibility with using three safeties to get some snaps for whoever that guy is. But I just think they like Tony Adams. Made the team as an undrafted player last year, started at the end of the season, looked pretty good, and they seemed pretty comfortable not doing anything at all at safety this offseason, which doesn't necessarily have to directly indicate that they like Adams, but I think it has to contribute a little bit, because if they really didn't like him, they would be a lot more desperate, I think, to add a safety. So I just think they like him, and not to say they'll hand it to him, but I think he's going to prove to them that he deserves it.
Yeah, there were rumblings that they were in on a few veteran free safeties like Jimmy Ward, but ultimately they weren't willing to meet that price. And like you said, I do think they're high on Tony Adams. I really do like the idea. If this is what they're doing now, granted, I really hope that they're able to get Whitehead to take a bit of a pay cut, because he does seem overpaid, especially when you look at the rest of the roster. When you look at the highest paid Jets, pretty big discrepancy in terms of talent and salary. And Whitehead's one of those guys who's just getting overpaid at this point, I would say. But I really do like the idea of having one of these safeties playing linebacker. With their draft strategy, as soon as they brought in Saleh, I mean, the two guys that are the backup linebackers, Jamie Sherwood and Hamza Nasruddin, both safeties. So clearly this is something that Saleh has been thinking about and likes in terms of his linebackers. He wants fast guys. He wants guys he can trust in coverage, hard hitters. And it's a shift to a more modern NFL when you see faster players, RPO packages. I mean, it's cool to see the Jets on the cutting edge of something. instead of trying to play catch up. And I think that is really what you're seeing here is a move more to those big nickel packages. I think you're right. I think not paying Quan is a sign that, hey, Chuck Clark is going to be basically a starting linebacker for this team. What do you think about that idea? I mean, they did it a little bit, like I said, with Sherwood and Nasruddin, but they really tried to make them full-time linebackers, have them out on weight. It seems like with Clark and Whitehead, they're still going to be technically safeties, but you're going to see them in the box a hell of a lot more, fulfilling that linebacker duty and playing linebacker, but just still bringing the speed, athleticism, and coverage skills of a safety. What do you think of that idea, and how do you feel about the Jets being on the cutting edge of something in the NFL?
Yeah, it's not something we see a lot of, but it's since Saleh came in, he's really shown some forward thinking. I would say with the way they've handled linebacker and just going for smaller, more athletic guys, and a lot of them, really more than half of them, in terms of the guys they brought in, have been converted safeties. So it's been cool to see, and if they go through with this plan, playing Clark or Whitehead as a pseudo linebacker. Um, it has its risks and its benefits. I think the risk is, they're both good run defenders or considered good run defenders. I think Whitehead last season missed a lot of tackles, wasn't the greatest season, but that's his perceived strength, playing in the box, being a hard hitter, a guy who's like a wrecking ball. And Clark, I think, is a more refined version of that. Maybe not as physical or as much of a wrecking ball as Whitehead might be, but a much more sound tackler and disciplined run defender. But they're both considered good box defenders. But to replace, that linebacker role that, you know, for the Jets, Quan was playing, it is a pretty big downgrade in size because Quan is 227, Clark is 205, I think. Yeah, he's 205. I think Whitehead's even smaller than that. I'm bringing it up right
Yeah,
now. Whitehead's 198. So it is a pretty big downgrade in size, even though they are good run defenders. It is a little bit different because, when a safety drops down to play the run, it's usually, they'll maybe start a little bit higher, and then they'll creep down. They'll take on a tight end, the edge maybe. A little bit different than a linebacker who will stay in the box and the O line's accounting for them. And a lot of the times they'll end up against a guard, against a tackle. So it is different and there's some risk in that size downgrade, but I think they both have the skill set to do it well. And we've seen it in spurts. If you look at um, both of their film, they do it not as much as the Jets may ask one of them to do this year, but occasionally you do see um, both Whitehead and Clark basically play linebacker and do pretty well. And I think one of the big positives that come with it is what you get in coverage because, if you have a third safety on the field instead of a third linebacker that's more speed, more range, more pure coverage skills, more matchup ability.
makes up for Mosley.
Yeah, definitely accounts for that because I think Mosley's a good player at this stage still, but he's definitely not a guy who you're ever going to want to put man to man on somebody. But if you drop another safety down there into that linebacker line, that second level where the linebackers are, that gives you a guy who, if you need to, like say they flex out a tight end, flex out the running back, something like that, you can put your safety on him and feel a lot better about that than if it were, a linebacker in that position. So it's a unique potential thing that they could end up doing.
All right, going back to my earlier point, I don't want you to look it up. Can you guess the top 5 highest cap hits on this Jets roster? I mean, think about all the big names that they've
For
added, the
this
talent on
season,
this team. Yes, everybody we're excited about, the people you see in the promotional material. Don't look it up. Who are the top 5 highest cap numbers? Let's hear it. Who's number 1?
Tomlinson's got to be in there.
Well, I want to hear it in order. Who's number 1?
In order?
Yeah.
Can I just do top 5
All right,
regardless of
fine.
order?
All right, fine. Who are the 5?
Go easy on me. I don't have an encyclopedic, memory of the cap here.
Yeah,
So
only random analytics and Jets uniforms.
Jets uniforms, I do have encyclopedic knowledge. Cap, very good, not quite to the uniform level, but
All right, so you say Lakin?
Tomlinson has to be up there.
Okay.
Um,
I'll tell you where they are. He's 4.
is Uzama in the top 5 this year?
No. Let me make sure I'm on 2024 or not. Yeah. No. Oh, yeah, 2023. All right, cool. Yeah. No, he's not.
Is Corey Davis up there?
Yes, he is. He's 3.
Okay. Is Lazard making it, or he's probably got a low number this year, so no.
Lazard's not in it, no.
Dwayne Brown?
Yep, he's 2. I guess I should say the numbers. You can pause for a second. Dwayne Brown's making $11.2 million. Corey Davis making just over $11 million, and Laken Tomlinson's making over $10.8 million. So you're missing number 5 and number 1. Who are they?
Is Reed up there?
No.
Is Whitehead?
Yes. Whitehead's number 5 at 10.2.
I know he had like a very low first year, and it went up to 10, or I think 10 this year, right?
Yeah. So who's the number 1 cap hit on the team?
I haven't got number 1 yet.
You got it. You know it. Oh, come on. You're gonna kick yourself.
It's not Rodgers.
Our listeners are screaming it out loud right now. Come on.
It's not Rodgers.
We were just talking about him.
Do I sound really stupid right now?
I mean, we are talking about.
Is it offense or defense?
Defense. Come on.
Please help me out. I'm looking
CJ
really
Mosley. Come on
oh
now.
My God.
$21.4 million, the worst contract in McCagnon.
It's 10:35. It's really late.
All right, I'll give you that. But isn't that crazy? The top 5 highest paid Jets are CJ Mosley, Dwayne Brown, Corey Davis, Laken Tomlinson, and Jordan Whitehead. I mean, on a team with like all these superstars that we're all excited about, not a single one is in the top 5 highest paid.
Yeah, that's wild.
So I guess Joe Douglas deserves some credit for that. But we do have a cap podcast planned for this summer to really dive into the.
I don't know why I wasn't getting Mosley faster.
Well, because you wouldn't expect him to be getting paid $21.5 million this season. But hey, I
should have got that much quicker.
You knew it. I knew you knew it. But I don't agree with all the CJ Mosley hate. I think that the contract makes people hate him more. He's still a damn good player, super high IQ, a leader for this team, helps a lot in the run defense. I love CJ Mosley, but damn, at $21.4 million this year, that's tough. It's a tough contract. I guess we can get into the meat and potatoes of what this podcast was supposed to be, but that's the OTAs. I'm sure storylines will pop up. We'll see about the Quinnen contract situation, of course. Removing the Jets from his Instagram or from his Twitter bio and unfollowing them, as all players upset with their contracts do these days. I do expect that deal to get done before training camp. I will say, and you said this to me, I think every player that's done that has ultimately ended up re-signing with their team. So maybe
do you think that has an effect at all? Like, do you think Joe Douglas is sitting in his office like, oh, Quinnen just unfollowed us on Instagram?
No, it's more of just like a media play. It's just to put pressure on the Jets and the media. That's all it is. But no, I don't think it really has a big. And then he also liked a tweet that said it wasn't about the numbers. It was about the length of the contract, which also gives me hope that this thing will get done fairly soon. But soon might be. I think it'll get done before training camp. Is how I feel about it. He'll get paid. Salah's not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. He's going to get his money. He deserves it. It'll be nice to see the Jets, pay a homegrown player. Is there any? I guess I should ask you this. We're also quick to say the Jets should pay Quinnen. I agree with it. He's plays an integral part of this defense. He's a damn good player. He's been here since the beginning. I'm sure you can tell all the young guys in the locker room the horror stories of the Adam Gase era. But I do think about a completely different situation, but I figure we should bring it up. I remember how on board I was for the Jets paying Muhammad Wilkerson back in 2016. Homegrown player coming off a dominant season. They need to pay him. They need to send this message that if you perform, you'll get paid. And then obviously, Mo Wilkerson was dealing with some other stuff apparently off the field, showed up, wasn't the same player. Do you have any concerns about paying a guy in Quinnen who really didn't blow up until this season? But again, he was still good in 2020. He battled injuries in 2021 and was still solid. But is there any, I guess there's always fear once you pay a guy, how is he going to be once he has the money? But is there any argument for not paying Quinnen or for waiting, especially with all the money the Jets are throwing out? Or do you think, this is a deal that has to get done before training camp?
Well, Joe Douglas has shown he's a line in the sand guy. That's not to say.
I think we've said that 4 times in this podcast now. Line in the sand is. I was the only euphemism I could come up with.
It's just a classic Joe Douglas line, not from himself, but describing Joe Douglas. Are there any other cliches we use for Douglas a lot? I think there's a lot of them. He wants leaders of men. He wants guys who hate. What is it?
Hate losing more than they love winning.
Hate losing more than they love to win. Those are some Joe Douglas cliches. But he has shown, like, with Marcus Williams in free agency last year, like, there is a line that he won't cross.
Where's that
And
line?
with Quinnen, I
I wanted
do
you to
you
say in
think
the
he would
sand.
go to, like, 28, 29
No.
if that's really how high Quinnen wants to go? 27?
No, I think the average per year is gonna be around 24, 24 and a half.
They're gonna get it done. Like, it's gonna be a moot discussion at some point, but, it's just taking its time. But, there are concerns in terms of, is he guaranteed to get 12 sacks every year going forward? Probably not. And it's fair to be concerned about, he just had, didn't just have one good year because he was really good in the previous 2 years, just not this dominant or consistent. So it is fair to be concerned when you have a breakout contract year and it's the only year you've had at that level. So it's something to keep in mind, but at the same time, it's not enough to justify not paying him. You have to keep him because you just don't get homegrown players who are that good, and not only that good, but that important to what you do that often. Because just look at this defensive line without him. It's very good, but especially the interior. Where are you if you don't have Quinn Williams? You take Quinn Williams out of the interior, it's frankly well below average, I think. So he's
Yeah.
very important to the Jets, and he'll be back.
I think when you're gonna give a guy big money, a big money extension, you're not just paying the player, you're paying the person. And I think that's the big difference between his situation and Muhammad Wilkerson. The Jets obviously have a much better understanding of who Quinn Williams, the person, is, but they've spoken quite highly of him and his work ethic. And I think if you believe in Quinn the person, I think you're comfortable giving him this money because Quinn the player is as dominant as they come. Not to compare him to Becton, who, by the way, I love Becton. I think he's in store for a huge season. He's clearly putting the work. I'm excited to watch him, and I think he's going to be a big part of any success the Jets have. But I think the
But
concern, yeah, here comes the but.
whenever there's a long buildup, there's a
Yes,
but
the
coming.
concern is Becton the person. Now, I'm not saying he's a bad guy or anything like that, but the injury, missing the last 2 years, adding all the weight, the off the field antics, and going to social media. And I know Quinn just removed the Jets from his bio, but he's never gone public on the record lampooning the coaching staff like Becton just did. I don't think Becton's going to get that extension because of that. Even if Becton, look, and I think, I like Becton. I'm in no room to criticize Becton the person, but when you look at the difference in how Quinnen has represented the organization, how Becton has represented the organization, there is a clear difference. And when you're giving out big money to these guys, it does matter. And I think that's Quinnen's going to get paid, and that's why I don't think Becton will get his contract in a year from now. But hey, who knows? Becton, I think, is in store for a big year. I think part of the reason he won't get that money is I think he's going to price himself out of the Jets' price range. I think he's in store for a big year. Jets won't have the money, and there are always going to be the questions of, can this guy stay healthy? If he gets hurt, can he keep off the weight? Is he just in this shape because it's a contract year? You have those questions. And this is a guy who's shown willingness to go public with his grievances, and that's something that NFL organizations don't like. So for all those reasons, Quinnen just checks every single box and the type of guy you'd want to pay, and I think it'll get done. Speaking of Becton, let's talk about this offensive line. You wrote a great article this week because this unit is really going to make or break this season. You have a 39-year-old quarterback that you got to keep healthy. The basis of your team, despite having that Hall of Fame quarterback, is going to be running the football. The Jets want to be dominant on the ground, play great defense, and then have Aaron Rodgers beat you when it matters. But they need to have a dominant unit, or at least an above average unit with this line to keep Rodgers healthy, to be able to control the clock, to be able to run the football. And you broke it all down, the best case, the worst case, the most likely case. Because when you look at this offensive line, the ceiling is quite high, but the floor is kind of scary low for a team that's in win now. Let's start with the best case. We'll keep it optimistic here. I think the presumed starting five, and again, it all depends if Becton is willing to play right tackle, but the presumed starting five as it stands right now is Dwayne Brown at left tackle, Laken Tomlinson at left guard, Joe Tippmann at center, Elijah Vera Tucker at right guard, and Mekhi Becton at right tackle. Injuries will change that. We'll see about Becton. We'll see about Tippmann. And, if Laken isn't playing well the first few weeks of the season, would they swap him out despite his insanely large cap hit? But with that starting five, Michael, what does the best case scenario look like for that starting five?
Well, yeah, in this article I made, I went through the best case scenario, worst case, and like a middle ground between those two to try and see the outlook of this unit going into the year. And I considered injuries in these scenarios, and I did use PFF grades to base doing this.
Oh,
And
boo! All right, we can just
which,
turn this. Yeah,
look, we've discussed that a lot on here. They have a lot of very interesting conclusions, to say the least. But it is really the only thing you can use to quantify offensive linemen. There's pretty much nothing else out there if you're looking at
the
like
film.
offensive line stats. So it really was the only way to do it. So you can turn off the podcast now. You could go ahead and come at me for that. But it was a good tool for the purpose of this study, just to have a way to quantify players and compare them against the rest of the league. So just want to put the disclaimer out there. But yeah, so to start with the best case scenario, I mean, the thing is with this offensive line, as scary as the floor is, and we'll get into that because it is very low, the ceiling is high. If things can break right, which it's going to be tough for all these things to break right, but if they do, they do have enough talent to legitimately be very good. And looking at this best case scenario, I didn't even go too optimistic with it. I wanted to keep it within reason. All I really did was push Dwayne Brown up to being a league average tackle, which is about what he was in Seattle in 2021. So let's say he stays healthy, no lingering issues, he's average. Tomlinson, he gets back to where he was in San Francisco 2 years ago. There's no reason he can't do that. He's only 31 years old this year. He doesn't have injury issues that we know of right now.
Just got to lay off the donuts.
Does have to do that. Too many donut tweets for our liking. Just
every time he makes a donut tweet, Michael sends it to me. He's like, "Can this guy stop talking about fucking donuts for the love of God?"
Hey, if he makes another Pro Bowl, he can tweet about them all day. But you know how we are as fans. We're overly critical of everything if you're not playing well. So that's that. But yeah, he can get back to that level. Not to say he'll make another Pro Bowl, but and I don't even think he was actually playing at a Pro Bowl level. He's more like top 15, top 11 to 15 type of guard. He can get back to that. He's healthy. He's still not too old. We've got Rodgers coming in, who should balance out a lot of the communication stuff that was an issue for Tomlinson specifically last year. So that's part of this best case scenario. Tippmann, he comes in and has a really solid season. Say he's like a top 8 to 10 center to start it out. We saw Tyler Linderbaum last year. He was great. Creed Humphrey out of the second round 2 years ago. He was great to start. So not out of the question. We see this a lot. AVT comes back. He was already great last year. Let's say he keeps that up. And then Becton at right tackle. Stays healthy. Improves off his rookie year where he was good, but he was inconsistent. I think he does want to improve off of that. Let's say he takes another step and is like a top 10 to 15 type tackle. So those 5 things, are they all going to happen? It's not likely, but none of those scenarios individually for each of those players are too optimistic or unrealistic. If you get all that with the grades that I laid out in the article, which is based off of where these players have been recently, the Jets would have landed with an average grade of 73.6 last year. That would have been 4th best in the league behind Chiefs, Eagles, and Falcons. So that's not out of the question. Again, not likely, but you get some good luck with injuries. Aaron Rodgers stabilizes things with just a veteran presence under quarterback, and it's possible. The talent is there for it to be an elite offensive line if they could stay healthy.
Yeah, injuries are obviously the big concern. Although I do like the depth. I do think that is the one thing that you can definitely say has improved with this unit is the depth is much better. If the Jets do lose, 3 tackles again, I'm still feel better about, Billy Turner or Carter Warren or Max Mitchell filling in than when the Jets were getting down to Cedric Ogbuehi. Who are some of the other tackles that they had? Connor McDermott. The depth
He was playing guard.
Yeah, exactly. And, he played pretty well there. But the depth is much better. So when the injuries happen, they're better suited to tackle them. Like you said, the veteran quarterback, if your quarterback is able to identify the defense pre-snap and get the ball out of his hands in 2.5 seconds, doesn't really matter. Your offensive line doesn't matter as much than when he's, trying to protect a younger, bit of a scatterbrained quarterback and Zach Wilson who's dancing around behind the line of scrimmage, it makes the offensive line look worse. So I do agree that you're going to get a better year from this unit than last year. It's just how good. When you look at worst case scenarios, though, I think it could get dark for this unit, especially when you think about all it takes is one bad rep, and I don't want to say it, but all it takes is one bad rep to really ruin this season. What's the worst case look like for this unit?
Yeah, I think worst case, as high as the floor is, or as high as the ceiling is, the floor is low. Like, let's start with the left side. Dwayne Brown, Lake, and Thompson. Both of them were pretty low-ranked players at their positions last year. Let's say they don't improve at all and play exactly as they did last year. Not out of the question. I don't think that will happen because of what we said with Rodgers, but it's not impossible. So I think that's part of it. Then Joe Tippmann at center. He's a rookie, and you never know what you're going to get from a rookie. He could have a great season. I think he will.
It does
In
help that
that,
he's a bigger rookie, because that is the
it
big
does,
adjustment
yeah,
for a lot of rookies in the interior is just the size difference.
that definitely helps. That's a good point because I think you read about a lot of linemen who they have to bulk up, add more weight. Max Mitchell is kind of in that mold. Tippmann really is not that guy at all, so that helps. But yeah, he's a rookie, so you don't know what you'll get. Maybe he struggles to start. AVT is the one guy who, aside from injuries, I'm not really afraid of him getting worse. So even in this worst case scenario, I think he should still be good.
That was me
But
knocking on wood if you heard that.
definitely, we need to do that more often because we say a lot of bold stuff on here. But then Becton at right tackle, there's definitely a chance that he is not quite as good as he was in his rookie year. It's been 3 years at this point. He's had to put in a lot of time rehabbing, hasn't been on the field, getting a lot of reps, so he could decline. So you get all those things on the field. Injuries then have to be a part of the worst case scenario. And in this worst case scenario I laid out, I estimated that the Jets starters would only play 70% of possible games, which is missing 25 starts combined over the course of the year. So then you get that, and you subtract the performance even more because you're having backups play so many games. And granted, I think the depth is better, like you said, but backups are backups. They're probably going to play worse than the starters. So you account for that. And then I estimated that with all these things happening, going against last year's rankings for the offensive line, they would have been 27th. And coincidentally, that's the exact same ranking they had last year. So the floor is that they could be just as bad as they were last year. And if
Which would still be
injuries
better
strike,
with a
it could
better
definitely
QB.
happen. That definitely raises the floor. I think that is worth considering, just in the sense that even if the offensive line plays exactly the same, it's not going to hurt as much because Rodgers just isn't going to take the sacks that Wilson was taking. He's going to get the ball out quicker.
Unless Zach is
And
forced to play.
unless that happens. So you throw that in too, and then the floor is definitely low here.
What's the most likely scenario? Obviously,
Did you
somewhere in the
knock on
middle.
wood there? No offense, Zach.
I knocked on wood.
There we go. I did as well.
What's the most likely scenario in your eyes? How do you see this offensive line playing out? And also, I'll throw in there, what do you think the offensive line combination ultimately is? I'm trying to figure out how to word this because I don't want you to predict injuries or anything, but what do you think the best five is, I guess? Because if I'm being honest, I think Dwayne Brown opens the season at left tackle, but I don't know if he's the left tackle when the Jets are hopefully fighting for a playoff spot. So what do you think the most likely scenario is?
Yeah, I think it comes down to Max Mitchell and his development. Do you feel good about him as a starting right tackle? And if you do, then I'd take Becton at left tackle over Brown. But it's just, if Mitchell isn't ready, and you could throw Carter Warren into that, although that's a much bigger wild card considering he's a rookie. If you feel good about that, then I think it's Becton on the left and Mitchell starting at the right tackle. But without that, I think Becton's just gonna have to suck it up and play right tackle. I understand where he's coming from. Considering the knee that he injured is, the knee that you're putting more pressure on the right side, and the fact that he just feels more comfortable at left tackle. But unfortunately, you don't really get to have a say when you're a player who hasn't played in 3 years, and it's just the best for this team right now, pending Max Mitchell's development. for Becton to be a right tackle. But if Mitchell looks good in his second year and he showed some promise as a rookie, then I think it could be considered to have Becton at left tackle. But looking at the most likely scenario that I laid out here in the article, I tried to find the exact midpoint between the ceiling and the floor that I laid out. And with all of that, so basically everyone going right in between the best case I laid out and the worst case, I had, and the injuries also. I had, not quite as bad as that worst case, but not great health like I had in that best case scenario. Considering all those things, I had them ending up with a combined performance that would have put them as the 10th best offensive line last year. So I I think the floor, or let's not say the floor, like the midpoint for this offensive line, or the median that they could end up at, is, I think that's better than people realize. The floor is undoubtedly low. We discussed that. The ceiling is high. I think a lot of people recognize that, but I think like the middle line is pretty high. As long as they don't get catastrophically injured and you don't get, a terrible season rookie year from Tittman, or like zero progression from Brown or Tomlinson, I think there's enough here to where this is still an above average offensive line, as long as it's not a, disastrous in terms of injuries. So I think the expectation is higher than some people may think it is.
Well, and I think also, you talk about it being disastrous in terms of injuries, but even if injuries do really hit this offensive line hard, I still think you can make an argument that even if the Jets lose 3 of these starters, this unit is still better than some of the lines that they've put up in years past, which, low bar to clear. But if the Jets are faced with a situation this season where they're playing, if they have to start Billy Turner at left tackle and Max Mitchell at right tackle, and Wes Schweitzer has to plug in at left guard, and you know, I'm still taking that unit over some of the units that we've seen this year. And on top of that, having a veteran quarterback, granted things change if he gets injured, but having a veteran quarterback like Rodgers and some of the offensive lines that he's had to deal with, I'm still confident in this Jets offense's ability to move the football and still put up points. So I don't think the floor is as low. I see what you're saying in terms of like the PFF grades that could be as low as they were last year. But even if injuries hit, even if guys like Lakin don't bounce back and Dwayne Brown don't bounce back, I still am not as worried about this offensive line. Could it be better? Could it be more dominant? Absolutely. But the ceiling with guys like Becton and AVT and Tittman is so high, and then you add the rest of the roster around it. I think this is a unit that can carry the Jets deep into the playoffs. Um, I guess I'll pose this question to you. Okay, let's say all 5 starting offensive linemen get injured, right? So I guess your starting left tackle is Carter Warren, maybe. Your left guard is Wes Schweitzer. Your center is McGovern. Your right guard's Tristan Colon, and your right tackle is Max Mitchell. Is there a Jets offensive line in the last 5 years that you would take that over? Because I think I would take it over.
2018 and 19.
Yeah. I mean, that's a low bar to clear, but the ceiling on that offensive line still, when you have young guys like Carter Warren and Max Mitchell, who you don't know what their
I
ceilings
don't want to
are.
overpraise it. Like, I
Oh,
would put it over
that's when we get into the mode of the podcast that we used to have a few years ago, where you're trying to pencil in, uh,
right.
Bryce Hall and Brandon Eccles as starting corners. But that's the mode that we had been in a few years ago. It's different with the
Reasons
win now
not to
team.
draft Sauce Gardner. There were a lot of people out there.
Hey, you can name search my CYJ Pod and Sauce. I had some positive Sauce tweets in there. I did a poll. I kind of want to retweet it, but I'm not trying to drum up any drama. But I did a poll in February that was like, what would be your reaction if the Jets took Sauce at number 4? And the majority hated it. Isn't that crazy? I guess it's not that crazy when you look at the Jets Twitter, but
we were all too high on the not our. I'm not on the Jets. I'm not going to say we and our or our whatever.
I say we. Come on. If you're diehard, you say we.
We were too high on the Jets corners coming out of 2021. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You want to talk about corners? How about that debate between Jets Twitter and Dolphins Twitter? And you just completely eviscerated any sort of I should give some context. Obviously, the Dolphins have made some moves this offseason, brought in Jalen Ramsey. They have Xavier Howard. They have some big names in that secondary. And then I forget who had the initial tweet, but he was ranking position groups, and he had, for corners, he had the Dolphins as number 1 and the Jets as number 2. which clearly is just based off of name value.
Number 3, actually, he had Dallas. It was Ryan Clark
Oh my
from
God.
ESPN. He had Dallas number 2.
Well,
Jets
sorry. Then there was
3rd.
another guy on Twitter who had the Jets as 2 and the Dolphins as 1. And
Yeah,
it's
I think there was
clear.
another one.
Yeah.
Bottom
And
line,
it's
a lot of people had the Dolphins above the Jets.
And then when you break down the actual numbers, it's not even close on who had the best corner, who had the best corners last year. When you look at the unit going forward, who has the best corners right now? Obviously, guys can fall off, injuries can happen, but it is funny that it's the state of most, NFL analysis and just sports analysis as a whole is the name value outweighs the actual production because Xavier Howard did not have a good year last year. Jalen Ramsey has been toasted. I mean, look, he's still a great corner and he's going to have a solid season, but it's not like Jalen Ramsey did not have the type of season that DJ Reed had last year. Although, if you ask most NFL fans who's better between DJ Reed and Jalen Ramsey, and granted, still probably take Ramsey over Reed, right? But you look at the production, DJ Reed outperformed him quite a bit, and that's not even counting Michael Carter II. Can you just give the breakdown you had of the Jets corner unit versus the Dolphins corner unit, and why you think this Jets corner unit is the best in the NFL?
Well, yeah, as you said, I think this specific situation is sort of it sums up the way that a lot of people kind of analyze football, and it applies to all sports, I think. Um, to where we're just giving the flowers to the guys who are already well known, already established, and it's like they don't have to play well anymore to prove that they're good because they made the Pro Bowl 5 years ago, so they're still really good. They're good forever just because they're a 5-time Pro Bowler. And that's all really Pro Bowls are. Once you make one, you're just in it every single year until you're old. So that's how Pro Bowls work. But anyway,
CJ Mosley was in the Pro Bowl this year,
which I think it applies to him,
yes.
unfortunately. He's a good player. I don't think he should have been in the Pro Bowl. Nevertheless, yeah, with the Dolphins, they obviously added Ramsey, put him next to Howard. Both these guys were in the Pro Bowl last year, but you look at the numbers, and it makes no sense that either of them were in the Pro Bowl, and it makes even less sense to claim that they're better than the Jets duo of Gardner and DJ Reed. Howard last year allowed the most yards per target of any cornerback in the league with at least 500 snaps. 10.3 yards a target. Gardner had the second fewest of any corner, 4.4. Reed was fifth best at 5.6. So not even close in that department. Touchdowns. Ramsey gave up 7 last year. That was tied for the second most. Howard gave up 6. 13 between the two of them. Sauce and Reed combined for 3. So just you go down the board, the coverage stats aren't even close. Penalties, 13 combined for Ramsey and Howard. Gardner and Reed at 7. You just go up and down, and it's not even close. Ramsey and Howard were not good in coverage last year, but they just made the Pro Bowl because people know who they are based off previous seasons. So there's a lot of that in the league where, we're ignoring the fact that the NFL is a what have you done for me lately league. And sometimes we forget that and we don't look at the production from this year and we're just going off of name brand. So it's a travesty Reed was not in the Pro Bowl last year, especially with Howard getting picked over him, considering just he was near the bottom in almost every single coverage related category. Other than pass deflections, Howard was just burnt toast in every coverage stat, and Reed is top 20 in just about everything. So yeah, I think it's interesting that the Dolphins cornerback duo is considered to be on the Jets level by some people. And look, like you said, things can change, injuries can happen, guys can regress. Ramsey and Howard could bounce back because they are talented players who have been stars in the past, and are obviously have elite talent. So things can change, anything can happen. But just based on last year, it was no contest. Jets cornerback duo was the best in the league, and Howard really struggled. And Ramsey was he was still good in some areas, but not up to his usual standards. So there's a lot to prove for that duo before I think they should be considered anything for the Jets or any team to be afraid of.
How much? I mean, I did what you will never do and look at the hellscape of replies. And I did see some Dolphins fans pointing out, hey, we got Vic Fangio now. They're expecting a bit of a bounce back from Xavier and Howard. They also pointed out, hey, Rodgers had a down year, and you're expecting him to have a bounce back, which to that I would say I think the athletic differences in a quarterback versus a corner are quite different. And also Rodgers really wasn't that bad last year playing with a broken thumb. And, we can make excuses all day long. But I think for a corner, once you start to see that regression as they get into the 30s, it's less likely to see the bounce back. But hey, Vic Fangio is a hell of a defensive coach. Maybe he's able to get something out of him. But if I'm not mistaken, his system is predicated on press man coverage. So I don't know how much coaching up he could do for 30-year-old corners and Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard that's going to make them that much better in coverage. What would you say to Dolphins fans that kind of pointed out to the scheme difference and changes from last year to this year?
I mean, it's definitely something to keep in mind. And like we said, like bounce backs can happen. And Fangio coming in, he's been very successful as a defensive coordinator. And he's facilitated a lot of great secondary play, with his aggressive coverage scheme. It's brought the best out of a lot of good corners. Most recently in Denver, they were very good defensively under him. So we'll see what happens. I think it could get a bounce back out of those guys. But as you said, I think the style of coverage that he wants his corners to play is also very athleticism reliant. So as aging corners, maybe more so for Howard because he's 30 this year. Ramsey's still, I think, going to be 29 this year. And he's probably been the better player. So, but either way, that's, when you're playing press man coverage, that's like pure athleticism, just matching guys as they go across the field. So that is something that you would think would be an issue for aging corners. So that's, I guess, what I would say to that. But I do acknowledge the fact that, like, look, none of this is set in stone going forward. It can change. It's just that based on last year, it wasn't really close at all. And that's just the main point.
And it's not even factoring in Michael Carter II. Where would you rank
Right.
him among nickel corners in the NFL?
I was actually looking at this specifically earlier, just looking at coverage stats of guys who mostly played in the slot. And I'd probably say he was like top 3
Jesus.
last year. Yeah, I'd say top 3
Wow.
among slot guys, top 3 to 5. There aren't a ton of guys who do what he does, like playing the vast majority of their snaps in the slot. There are a lot of guys who do it like 20 to 50% of the time, but I think Carter led the league in terms of percentage of snaps in the slot. But yeah, he kept the mistakes down really well, as well as any slot corner in the league. That's what I think puts him up there. I think he only had 1 touchdown allowed last year. Does not miss a lot of tackles. Does not commit a lot of penalties. Defends the run really well. He had some games at the end of the year where he gave up some chunks of yardage. That put his yardage numbers to a good but not great level. But in a lot of those other categories, like I mentioned, touchdowns, penalties, tackling, run defense, he's very high ranked in all of those.
Who do you think is more underrated, him or Reed?
Probably, I would say Carter, because really outside of the Jets, he's probably even less well known than Reed is, as underrated as Reed is himself, not even making the Pro Bowl. I would say Carter, but I mean, you also have an argument for Reed because he should have been in the Pro Bowl and he wasn't, in favor of players who had absolutely no right being there. So it's tough. They're both underrated, but the facts are there. As a trio, they were the best last year.
All right, I think we can wrap it up there, Mike. I mean, look at that, Mike. We cleared over 70 minutes of content, with really nothing outside of a few bullet points on this Google Doc. I'm proud of us. We do have a few podcasts that we've planned that we're very excited for. I think you finally saw what I wrote in the Google Doc an hour ago. Finally,
we don't need to address what it says.
Okay, there we go. We do have a few podcasts that we're
Put
excited
in your
about.
guesses. Send us your guess of what it says. If anyone guesses the exact 3 words that are written on this Google Doc right now, I will buy tickets for you to a Jets game.
Now somebody's going to hack our Google account, Michael. So please don't do that.
All right, I rescind the offer. And don't guess it. You'll never get it.
We do have a few podcasts that are coming out that we're very excited for. I have a few guests on the show. So be on the lookout for that. Also, you know what, Michael? I'll do the plugs afterwards. I have a little game for us to play. I shouldn't say I have it because you're the one who introduced it to us, but our listeners can
I
play
introduced
along.
the game. That's right.
Yeah, that's what I said. Okay. whatever. You can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter, Michael at Michael_Nania, myself, Ben W. Blessington. Go to jetsxfactor.com. Best place to go for Jets content. If you're able to, please rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. That helps out the pod a ton. Subscribe to the Jets X Factor YouTube channel. That's where we post all the pods. Check out the other Jets X Factor pods. Michael, let's play this game. Now, I guess I'll let you break it down. You brought it to me. I think this is a good party game. If you're a big NFL fan, if you want to test your NFL knowledge, Michael and I were doing this the other day, and I think we played for like an hour straight. It is pretty fun. I hope we get a good draw on the podcast because it'll be pretty lame if we don't. But why don't you set the scene? Did we have a whole debate if it was set the scene or set the stage last like a year ago? All right, whatever.
Set the scene? I think
remember
we did
that
have
it was
this
on a
one.
pod. So many hours of just talking random nonsense.
I
But
think both could work. I don't remember having the debate. I feel like
it was a year ago. It was after the draft.
I feel like set the stage makes more sense. But set the scene
scene
could also make sense because you're explaining what the scene is going to be.
All right,
set the stage is
set the
more
scene.
like you're
What is this
physically
game?
setting up the stage. All right,
Our listeners
continue.
can play along at home. Try to guess the player. But tell us, what is this game? Where can the listeners go to play it?
So this game is called Weddle in honor of the former NFL safety Eric Weddle. It's a pun off of Wordle, which most people I think have heard of. It's basically like an NFL version of Wordle, where you're guessing a random player in the league, and it gives you a few hints like the position they play, the division they're in, the height, jersey number, and you guess players, and it'll tell you like if you're close or not. Like, are you in the right conference? Are you on the right side of the ball, offense or defense? Maybe their height is higher or lower than what you guess. Jersey number is higher or lower. Basically, you just guess a random player going off of hints that you get for each of the guesses you put in.
You could now there's a normal mode, which is probably just for normal people, and it's what is it? Just quarterback, running backs, and receiver. Like it's more of like a fantasy
players,
like well-known players. Then there's the hard mode, and you can get anybody in the NFL. So we've had a few draws where we just get somebody we have no idea, and I really hope we don't embarrass ourselves.
Nick Scott on the Bengals.
Yeah, we did find out that like NFC linebackers, I don't really know that many. I was like, who the hell are the linebackers on the Saints and Panthers?
Not a super marketable group of guys right now.
All right, so I've shared my screen with Michael. This is probably where we should.
You don't want to get guards or linebackers or centers.
All right, here we go.
That's the key. But here we go. We're jumping in right now. We're doing any player in the NFL, offense, defense, or special teams.
So you get 10 guesses. We decided that the best guy for us to put in, because you want to find somebody who's kind of give you some information. We decided Quincy Williams because he wears middle of the pack number. He'll tell you AFC or NFC, offense or defense. I really hope one of these days Quincy Williams.
His height is in the middle, I think.
His height is in the middle. So we put Quincy Williams in, and my browser crashed. Okay. Hold on. He broke the game.
He broke the game just like he broke the Packers' souls.
Nice. There we go. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It's a linebacker in the AFC
It's an AFC East linebacker.
But it's not. I'll read it
out.
Above
5'11".
All right. Yeah. You read it out. It's your game. You read it out.
He's AFC East linebacker, above 5'11", older than 26. His number is below 56.
But he's not in the Jets.
Here.
So it's a Bills, Pats, or Dolphins linebacker. So I think the first thing is number lower than 56.
Judon. That's a good one.
Who it is?
Oh, he's not
on the Pats. He is 6'3". He's older than 30.
He's older than 30.
Yeah.
This is an old guy. Could it be Von Miller? No, wait, what number is he on the Bills?
Let's try Von Miller.
He's like 40 something, right?
Try is he listed as a linebacker? Let's try it.
I think he would be. Let's go with
Von Miller.
It's Von Miller.
Wow, that was
3
too
guesses.
Easy. That was too easy. Yeah, I kind of want. Now, should we play with fire here? Should we really try to go in for one more? I'm worried about us.
This is entertaining audio. All 7 people listening to this.
All right, here we go. Quincy Williams. Hey, we got more than 7. Come on now. All right, Quincy Williams again. All right, you read it out. Read out everything. You got to do a good job narrating since they can't see the actual screen.
Okay, so we put in Quincy Williams. It is not in the AFC. So this is an NFC player. It is a defensive player. It's not a linebacker, though. He's above 5'11". He's younger than 26 years old, and his jersey number is below 56.
Who do you want to guess?
Really narrows it down.
Yeah,
we
just
got some
an
good
NFC
information.
An NFC defensive player whose number is lower than 56. We can really go anywhere here. What are we feeling?
Fletcher Cox. No, he's under 26.
Nah, come on
He's
now.
under 26 years old. It's a young guy. Anyone drafted last year?
Was there
Kayvon
anyone
Thibodeau.
drafted last year?
No.
All right. Kayvon Thibodeau. Let's try it. Okay, is he in the NFC East?
22-year-old NFC East player. Numbers between 5 and 56. That really narrows it down.
Not a linebacker, though.
Height is between 5. He's probably 6 feet because there's a yellow on the 5'11", which means you're close.
So probably DB, an NFC
6
East
feet,
DB.
NFC East, non-linebacker, 22 years
so
old.
He's drafted last year.
Probably, 22. Yeah, most likely drafted last year. Probably a DB.
Yeah. Who are DBs drafted on the either Eagles,
be a very
Cowboys,
random
or Commanders?
guy.
Could be a very random guy. Eagles, Cowboys, or Commanders? Let's think. Give us a random DB who's 22 on the Eagles, Cowboys, or Commanders.
Let's just get a team.
All right, fine. So we just
get
want to
someone
put
on
anybody.
The Eagles. Put Bradbury.
He's not. All right, fine. We'll do it just for.
We know it's not him. We just want info.
Not the Eagles.
It is a corner.
It is a corner.
It's not the Eagles or Giants.
So it's a Cowboys or Commanders corner.
Who's 22 years old?
Oh fuck! We should have just left it with Von Miller.
We're not gonna get this one.
You don't think so? Hold on. Let's not. We can get this. Who's young? Who's young on the Cowboys or
Only Cowboys corner I know is Diggs.
Well, they have Stephon Gilmore too, don't they?
Well, he's not 22.
I know.
Should we just?
What about
we give up on this one.
What about the Commanders? Let's just try Trevor. You don't know any Commanders corners? Come on, think. We got it. It is a Commanders corner. All right, come on. We know this. Think of a Commanders corners. Anybody?
I got nothing at all.
Oh God, they have like.
This is tremendous, riveting audio.
We
can't get this one.
Don't they have one of the Fuller brothers? But he's not 22.
Just skip this.
All right, fine. All right, all right, let's see who it is. All right,
we're skipping through. We're gonna see who this is.
Just by spamming AJ Brown, who's the top. Emmanuel Forbes. God damn it! I didn't know that. Did you know that?
I don't know. No, I have no idea who Emmanuel Forbes is.
Look up Emmanuel Forbes. Let's see.
I'm sure he's a great guy.
He is their starting corner, so maybe we should have gotten that.
He's born in 2001, so he's younger than me.
When was he drafted? What round was he drafted?
Oh, he was drafted this year.
Oh,
wow!
That like makes us look so stupid that we didn't. All right, we didn't look at corners of the draft this year.
We had admitted many times we weren't as much into the draft this year as previous years.
Fine. All right, fine. One more. We can't go out on that.
We've been greatly embarrassed.
Here's the rubber match. Quincy Williams gave us no information.
So we put in Quincy Williams and nothing matched. So he's an NFC offensive player, above 5'11", younger than 26, numbers above 56. Have at it, folks.
Oh, God, please don't tell me it's an offensive lineman. All right, well, you know what?
Hopefully it's a tight end.
Let's go. Younger than 26. All right. You want to try tight end, an NFC tight end like George Kittle? Wait, younger than 26, though.
What about Trey McBride?
What the Y?
Okay.
NFC West.
Not
younger than 23. Okay. You got to read it out. You got to do it. One of us has to read out the whole thing because they can't.
NFC West offensive player, not a tight end, above 6'3", younger than 23, numbers below 85, above 56.
It's going to be
probably an O lineman.
How many NFC West? Okay, wait.
Well, Abraham Lucas,
Charles
Cross. Those are two good ones.
Damn,
it's not Seattle.
Damn,
but it is a 6'5", 22-year-old tackle.
Okay, so either on the Niners or Rams. A 22. Oh, bro. This is exposing us. All right, let's think. We know them. 22, unless it's a complete random. Was there anybody? Because we have to think about first-round picks.
But
first and second-round picks.
Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey for the Niners at tackle for them last year.
Who are the Rams? And the Rams have like bums on their offensive line these days.
The Rams are just all randos.
We can't end on nothing, Michael. We gotta. I just want to cheat and look it up.
We're not going to know this.
All right, fine. All right, fine. We'll do one more. We can end on that.
So much for Rams X Factor.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
All
It
the Rams
was
fans
Spencer
listening are just
Burford.
crying.
Spencer
Burford, my favorite offensive lineman.
Okay.
Sure, he's a great guy.
One more. We can get this. Quincy Williams. You read it out. Read out everything.
Okay, so we know he's in the AFC. He's an offensive player. He's above 5'11", older than 26, number under 56.
Okay.
So this could be a quarterback.
Okay. So who do we want to try? Not in the AFC East. Older than 26. Could be really anybody. The world is our oyster here, Michael. Who are we going with? Ryan Tannehill. Interesting guess. AFC South.
Not a quarterback. Under 6'4", younger than 34. Numbers below 17.
That's good. That's
a key hint right there.
That's a key hint. Okay, in the AFC South, not a quarterback, number below 17. So somebody of the Jags, Texans,
Calvin Ridley.
Colts. Interesting guess. Okay.
He's 0, right? It is a wide receiver.
Okay, that's
it's
good.
Not Jacksonville.
I like our chances.
He's 6 feet tall, older than 28, and his number is above 0.
So
he could be number 1, right?
Yeah.
Because it's yellow.
Okay, let's think. Texans receivers.
Or Colts. Or Titans.
Is it Robert Woods on them?
Let's try. No, he's older
Robert
than
Woods.
28.
Is it Robert Woods on the?
Yeah, I can try that.
Oh, there you go! Look at that! Look at that! Thank you. That used to be when I was a kid, because I was a pseudo USC fan.
Oh, he's actually on the Texans.
That's what I said.
Oh, that's who you said. I thought you meant Titans.
No,
I was thinking he was on. I did see that. I just forgot.
I was a pseudo USC fan because of Mark Sanchez when I was a kid. So I had a Robert Woods jersey. That's true story. A USC number 2 Robert Woods jersey. So thank you. All right, we can end on that, Michael. All right, so yeah, if you want to play, you go to Weddle, WeddleUnlimited.com. It's really for the diehards. We're gonna be so good at naming random players around the NFL if we play this game enough. It'll be like that GeoGuessr guy from the Jet schedule release. Do you buy it? Was that real? Do you think? See, like
I watched some videos after they posted that to try and see whether or not it was real. Some videos where he explained his methodology of how he does it. I think it is real. It's just like hours and hours of research to recognize stuff to help him get it that quickly. I don't know.
Okay, that's crazy.
It's impressive though.
I don't buy it. And I mean, I think I did see something that we were seeing an even shorter version of what he was getting to see. Like he might get a second, but that was nuts. All right, my goal, Michael, if we just play this at the end of every podcast for the last 5 minutes, by the season, we're going to know every single player in the NFL. We're going to have it down.
Every NFL player.
We'll know their height, weight,
you tell
position.
us the name, we'll know their height, weight, jersey. Not weight. That unfortunately, that's not part of this.
Oh.
But we'll know the position, team, jersey number, everything.
I think we can end there. That's better than our typical uniform talk, I would say. So thank you to the 10 people still listening. I accidentally removed you from the podcast for a second. My bad. Thank you for the 10 people listening. Everybody have a great week. We'll be back on Monday. I'm excited about this lineup of pods coming up. Go Jets.